Did anyone experience it with me? Where through the art of questioning that was going on in front of the room, there was this interdependence that was going on in the room around storytelling. So who learned something about possums tonight? Raccoons? White squirrels? Who's curious about those white squirrels and where that park is? And when you came in here tonight, that was not on your mind, right? How about that sound beneath my feet? I'm definitely curious about that. Okay. Distemper or something. That's pretty neat, right? I wouldn't let that just fly by. I want to kind of put that back into the room. Just be aware of that. Just be culturally aware of that. Just getting together and sharing information like that through some facilitation, we're profoundly learning. Like it's like a big curve, and I would call it on this side of the equation, right? On this side of the equation where we can learn vast amounts of information in a short amount of time because of our sharing together and sharing information. But there's some mentoring involved too, right? Some key questions, right? That led down that path. It wasn't by accident how we got there. One of the things that we talk about is the level of interconnection that we're going for in resilience, in this art of mentoring approach, requires mentoring. It requires an awareness to ask the kind of questions to bring it into people's minds. So for example, there was a time when I didn't know what a robin was. And maybe you can look back and think for yourself. Maybe some people still don't know what a robin is, you know. But there was a time when I didn't know what a robin was. So in my childhood, if you asked me somewhere along the way, did you have robins in your neighborhood as a child, I would say, no. There weren't any robins there. They weren't invented yet, I guess. Because they weren't there. I know they weren't there. I have no memory of them being there. I played on the lawns every day, ran out the door, across the lawn, back across the lawn, in the door, end of the day, beginning of the day. You know, I played kick the can on that lawn. I was all over that lawn. I played mitts on that lawn, you know. No robins. No memory of robins. Now, I'm pretty sure, you know, when I know robins today, that where there's grass, there's robins. You know what I'm saying? Like, who goes in the parks and sees robins eating worms in the grass, right? It's pretty much a no-brainer. The environment creates us. So, what was going on there? What happened? Well, somewhere along the way, somebody introduced me to this bird. They brought it into my awareness. The mentor. Hey, look at this bird here, you know? And the bird flies away, you know? And I follow my attention because their attention is on this bird for a second, and they say something like, wow, you know, who was that? What did you see? See any colors? See a flash of white on there? What colors did you see? I'm like, I saw some orange on there, right? And they might have given me something like a field guide. Or they said, you know, that was a robin. Like, wow, that's cool. Oh, I've heard of robins, right? It kind of starts to click. But up until then, they didn't really exist for me. And that kind of just went out of my mind. But in that moment, something profound happened. I want you to imagine that every relationship you have in the world, every one, that means you to all the people around you, you to all the things, you to all the species in nature, they're like strings. They're like little ropes, but they're two-way channels. And they can get larger or smaller. And that for each one of those connections that you have, there is a corollary inside your brain. Something gets connected in there. So in this moment, the mentor points out me to this bird, and they help me build a string to this bird. Next time I see this bird, you know, I'm having a relationship with this bird, and it can grow a little stronger, especially if they leave me with a question. Like, I wonder where that bird lives, right? instead of giving me information, like I said before, oh, the bird lives there, it's like, I wonder where it lives. Curiosity starts to form a neuron connection in my brain. In fact, they've tracked this in the brain. Myelin sheathing actually gets thicker the more you repeat a brain pattern and awareness. It basically comes down to mind focus and sensory input creates neurons in your brain. Plus, curiosity and adrenalated states, which makes sense, I wonder where my food's going to come from, helps form some brain patterns, right? Or, oh my God, a tiger almost killed me, I'll never do that again. Right? It kind of makes sense. These are things that form brain patterns. But the mind focus and sensory input one is really important because, if I tend to focus on something, it will create a pattern in my brain and it'll show up for me in reality. So, the mentor comes in and interjects a new one for me. It's like the mentor's choice. It's the mentor's choice whether I get to know this robin or not. And as a parent, you probably know this. Or if you're a teacher, you have a sense of this. Where I lead the awareness, what I put my attention on, they'll put their attention on. So, like in my house growing up, I had a monitor, a TV monitor. You could plug it in the wall, And we never did anything with it. We never watched it. There was no TV because I had this idea that I didn't want to have my child watch TV for a few years. So we read books and did other things. But it wasn't like we didn't hide it, right? It just didn't exist for her. She walked past it every day. It was just nothing. It's just this box, like all the other things in the house. It had no importance. But there were certain things that did have importance, the things that we gave attention to, like knives or something like that, or the wood stove, or things that have adrenaline states and curiosity around them, like sugar and honey, and, sweets and juice and all those kinds of things that a kid like, where the candy's kept, I know where that is. But the TV was just like, inherently it's just a box. It's not interesting, So it was our choice whether or not that was going to happen. So then somewhere along the way, the mentor introduces me to this sound that I'm hearing. Now the sound's going the whole time, but I don't hear it until they say, hey, what's that sound? And I go, what sound? And I actually step out of my sensory patterns, that I'm always focusing on, and I stop and I listen to something new for a second. I'm curious. Oh, it's important to my friend. I've got a relationship with my friend. My friend has a relationship to this unknown thing. I want to get in the club. What is it? And I hear the sound. I can't see it. I'm like, cool. I'm like, what? Like, that's so beautiful. You see it in the sunshine. I'm like, where? Like, I've got ears. I got eyes. Are they like, Superman or something? Like, what are you using to see this thing? So I get over, I kind of move over to where they are and push them out of the way a little bit. Where? They're like, oh, it's right there. It's so amazing, And then they sing the song back like that. I'm like, geez, I'm looking. It's like my eyes don't work or something. It's driving me crazy. And they're not putting me on, That's actually in plain sight for them. It's like one of those eye game things, those, what do they call those, mind's eye game things? Like someone says, oh, look, it's funny, it's a clown with 3 noses, and you're like, I can't see anything. Hate those things. But nature's just like that, It's like a muscle. You work this muscle, build your eyes so you can see it. So eventually, I make the connection because it flies away. And my eyes can sense movement, right? So much easier. And it flies to another tree. I'm like, oh! And then when I get there, I'm like, hey, it's the robin, And I have this moment where I make the connection between the song, which I was hungry to figure out what it was, and this bird they showed me like a week ago. And I get to make the connection. And it's like fused. Bzzzt. And my rope to that bird gets thicker. It's like my heart thumps, It's a great moment. Now when I walk out the door in the morning, I hear that song. It's now in my oral landscape. I get the benefit of hearing the dawn chorus of the robin. I get the gift of that. Like, I don't have to turn on my CD player to get a good sound. I lay in my bed and I hear it through the window closed window of my house, especially like in spring when they're like insane. You know, robins are insane in spring. They're just like up so dang early, and they're like on speed. They're like drip, trilly, drip, trilly, drip, trilly, drip, trilly, drip, 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 trilly, drip, 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 trilly, drip, drip. You ever heard this? They're like insane. And I'm just like, God, you can shut up. You know? You're out of control. You know, turn it off. You know, like, and then I make this joke on myself because I thought 2 years ago I never heard that. Isn't that funny? You know, it didn't even exist for me, which is hilarious. But it's exciting because it's the mentor's choice.